standard to what you'd expect. It has cards like Experiment 1, Voice of Resurgent, Fleece Mane Lion, Boon Satyrs, Advent of the Worm, Selesnya Charm. But the cards that make it unique are Skylasher, Mistcutter Hydras, 4 of each in the main deck in order to beat the Devotion decks, the Mono Blue Devotion deck, but it also has 4 copies of Banisher Priest as an additional way to deal with Master Waves, along with 1 copy of Last Breath, again, to deal with Master Waves.
And we are underway now with our match. Thea, being the second seed, was on the play. She started with a Boros Guildgate, Andrew also with no 1-drop, but Thea gets the first 10 points of damage in on turn 2 with an Ash Zealot, swinging with haste.
So it looks like Andrew has a Forest in the Plains. He has a Fleece Mane Lion that can put a damper on Thea's army. Andrew only has 2 copies of Fleece Mane Lion, but that card is very effective against Thea, as she has all her 2-drops are just 2-power creatures.
Yeah, so when talking to Andrew about the matchup, one of the things he's a little worried about in the matchup is that he feels he has to be the aggro deck in this matchup, more so than he would normally have to be, because of the fact that he is unable to deal with Stormbreath Dragon, which is a 4 of in Thea's deck.
Exactly. Stormbreath Dragon is one of those cards that you really have no answer to if you're green-white aggro. So if you can't put up enough pressure before the dragon comes down, it's going to make short work of you.
All right, but unfortunately for Andrew, Thea is taking on the full aggro role herself on turn 3. She makes a Burning Tree Emissary, using the free mana to Mizium Mortars the Fleece Mane Lion and continue Ash Zealot's assault.
Yeah, so Andrew here with no permanence in play. Thea has 2 creatures. She used that Mizium Mortars on Fleece Mane Lion, and that's pretty much as good as it can get, because obviously most of the creatures in Andrew's deck are 2/2s. Mistcutter Hydra is probably not going to be able to get hit by a Mizium Mortars, but here comes one of the other potential targets in Banisher Priest. So Banisher Priest is able to take care of that Ash Zealot there. Let's see if Thea has an answer for it. She's going to attack with Burning Tree Emissary. Andrew elects not to block because he doesn't want to give the Ash Zealot right back. And here comes a Boros Reckoner for Thea. So that's another card that can be very effective in this matchup.
Yeah, Andrew said that Stormbreath Dragon was his primary concern, but the secondary concern in this matchup is Boros Reckoner. As you saw that turn, Thea did draw a Stormbreath Dragon, but she's still only stuck on 3 lands right now, so there will be at least one turn where Andrew does not have to worry about Stormbreath getting cast.
So Thea, yeah, like you said, she's stuck on 3 mana, has a Stormbreath Dragon in her hand. Andrew now casts a second Banisher Priest. So you can see here why Anger of Gods is so effective in this matchup. Unfortunately, like we said earlier, Thea does not have access to Anger of Gods in her main deck.
Yeah, game 1 is a little bit easier for Andrew here. He is down to 12, though. Thea continues swinging with Burning Tree Emissary. Andrew really can't afford to block that with any of the Banisher Priests right now.
Oh, and a good drop here for Thea. She has Fanatic Amogus. That's going to drain Andrew for 3 and drop him down to 12, and put another big threat on the board. Oh, I'm sorry, drop him down to 9. So Andrew with a pair of Banisher Priests in play, but neither can really afford to block because it's just going to give Thea back one of her creatures.
Yeah, Thea's attacking as though Andrew had no creatures in play. So right now, 9 to 18, Andrew's definitely behind the gun, and it's especially as we know, Thea has a Stormbreath Dragon, and it's only a matter of time until she hits that 5th land. Once she does, Andrew will be on at most a 3-turn clock, and he has no answer to it.
Yeah, and this kind of is a perfect example of why Andrew wanted to be the aggressor in this match, because he hasn't really done. He only was able to attack for 2 this game, and Thea, he was a little fortunate that Thea missed the land drop, because if she didn't, this game is probably over already. So Andrew is definitely under a lot of pressure here. Let's see what he can do. He has Mistcutter Hydra, which can come down as a 4/4 if he chooses, but looks like he's just going to play Scavenging Ooze. That's going to give him a little cushion there. Scavenging Ooze can remove that Fleece Mane Lion Game in Life, become a 3/3.
Yeah, I think what he likes about Scavenging Ooze is that it's a creature that can actually block here because of that play that you mentioned. It can eat Fleece Mane Lion, go to a 3/3, especially if he has that Scavenging Ooze in play. It means if he needs to, he can start trading other creatures to develop a really large Scavenging Ooze.
Yeah, well, he only has 1 Ooze in his deck, so that's a fortunate card there. I think at this point, though, he's fine with giving the Ash Zealot back, so he could block with the Banisher Priest. And now he has a Mistcutter Hydra, which is a 2/2, so I think the fact that he has that Scavenging Ooze in play, I think he's kind of okay with trading the Banisher Priest now with the Ash Zealot under it.
Yeah, and you can see just how much Andrew's trying to grab the aggression roll back there, playing Mistcutter Hydra on 2 as opposed to, waiting to make it a 4/4 or a 5/5. He just needs to attack her life total before she plays one of the 5 drops.
Exactly. It looks like Thea did not draw a 5th land. It might be a Hammer Perforos in
Yeah.
hand.
It is a hammer. That's a pretty fortunate draw for Andrew. Hammer is really not particularly good in this situation. Thea's next creature already has haste, and she really can't afford to sacrifice a land on this board.
Yeah, so it looks like Frostburn Weir is going to come down here. Thea doesn't really have any other options. Andrew's going to be able to draw for the turn. He doesn't have much of an army, but he might have drawn another Mistcutter Hydra. If he did, that would be huge here, because that can come down as a 4/4 and allow him to continue to put a little more pressure on Thea.
Yeah, he can actually. These Mistcutter Hydras are actually providing a decent amount of pressure. Remember, Frostburn Weird actually is blue, so it can't block the Mistcutter Hydras in this matchup. So Andrew will be able to attack with that Mistcutter Hydra and at least force trades on Thea's side of the board, if not deal damage.
Yeah, because if he does make it a 4/4, then Thea can trade there, but then that gives 2 more creatures in the graveyard that Scavenging Ooze can eat up in following turns. So let's see what Andrew decides to do this turn. He's gonna. Looks like he might be thinking about attacking first. Maybe he just wants to gain a little life off that Scavenging Ooze. Maybe given the fact that Thea has missed several land drops, he might be thinking that there is a Stormbird Dragon on the horizon, so maybe I need to gain a little life here.
Yeah, so he's looking. Yeah, he has a lot of options here.
He also has a Selesnya Charm too, so let's see what he decides to do. That Selesnya Charm could be the last 2 points of trample damage he needs later on in order to win this game. So maybe he's just trying to figure out how much damage he can do this turn, trying to maximize as much damage as he can.
What he can do with the Celestia Charm if he wants, it also can let him maybe attack with the Banisher Priest if Thea tries to trade a Banisher. If he can get Thea to try to trade a Banisher Priest with that Burning Tree Emissary, he could Celestia Charm it over the top.
Yeah, the problem with that play, though, is that Thea can just block with the Frostburn Weird and then just force the action.
Right, and then she'd turn it into...
I think she'd be okay with that if she just loses Frostburn Weird but gains the information of a Celestia Charm. So.
All right. Well, Andrew did decide for a more conservative line. It's just Mistcutter Hydra that's attacking. Thea has the option of trading or taking 2. We'll see which way she goes with it. And if you're in Thea's situation, you're really just trying to survive until land number 5 shows up.
Yeah, so looks like Frostburn Weird is being considered as a blocker. Unfortunately, that will not be able to block.
Yeah, I think you're realizing it there.
Yeah, the one random way that Mistcutter Hydra is actually useful in this matchup. So I think Thea's debating if she wants to just take it or not. And it looks like she did take it, so she drops down to 14. And Andrew just passes the turn back here.
Yep, and we see land number 5. It is, however, Temple of Triumph. Andrew has one more turn here before he starts taking dragon hits. Because of the number of creatures Andrew has, it is still possible that he can race the Stormbreath Dragon.
Oh yeah,
it's definitely hard, but
it's definitely possible because again, he has that Selesnya Charm, he has Scavenging Ooze, which can be able to gain him some life. But Hammer comes down for Thea. Thea could also just choose to just play the Stormbreath Dragon and not attack with it.
Yeah, now she's under a fair amount of pressure, though. Andrew's end step play there was Advent of the Worm, making a 5/5 trample. And Andrew now has amassed quite the army here and should be able to push a fair amount of damage through.
Yeah, Andrew looks like he drew a 4 so turn. He still, I believe, has a Selesnya Charm in his hand. I would not be surprised to see him just swing in with the Advent of the Worm, I guess the Mistcutter Hydra. He might even go in with the Scavenging Ooze at this point as well. Now that he has another forest, he can actually activate the Scavenging Ooze and then pump it to make it a 5/5. So that should be able to attack through the Fanatic Amogus.
Yeah, I think that I almost want to say that I think this game has turned around. It's now in Andrew's favor.
Yeah, Andrew's definitely on the advantage now. Thea Thea missed too many land. There was too many turns where Thea just missed that 5-drop.
All right, we see Mistcutter Hydra joins the party with the Advent token to make another 5/5. So now we have a 5/5 trample, a 5/5 pro blue, and a 2/2 pro blue. 2/2 stays home, so just the 5/5s come in.
Yeah, so there's really no profitable block here for Thea. She can't block Mistcutter Hydra with the Frostburn Weird. She can double block it with the Fanatic and Burning Tree Emissary, but that would end up just losing both her creatures. So, but it looks like that's what she's debating right here.
Yeah, she may have to make the play. Andrew is setting up for a lethal swing next turn. He's holding onto that Selesnya Charm, and presumably it should next turn be able to trample something over, I would say, to deal the remaining points of damage, if not be very close.
Yeah, so this is a tough one for Thea. I think it looks like she just wants to double block here.
Well, I mean, if she takes, chump blocking doesn't look particularly enticing. If she just takes 10, it's almost certain that Andrew has a lethal swing next turn.
I definitely agree. You can't chump block there, but the question is, does she want to try to give herself an out as a Fanatic Amogus? Because if she draws Fanatic Amogus, it'll drop Andrew down to 1, I believe, only. So is
She
that
does
what it would
draw
do?
Fanatic
Oh, so
Amogus
she
for the
did draw
turn.
Fanatic Amogus. So um, let's.
So if she'd taken all of the
Yeah,
damage there,
if she'd taken all the damage, I think she actually still would. She would have been
she's
able.
1
Yeah,
point short.
no, she would have been able to kill him because she could have attacked with everything. Because Fanatic would have haste because of the hammer. So that's the option that I was thinking about. Was maybe she just take it there.
There's still 4 blockers though on Andrew's side.
Are there? I think he has.
Yeah, he has
Scavenging
Priest,
Ooze?
Priest,
Oh, so he
Ooze, and 2/2.
That's right. That Ooze, the Miscutter Hydra was back. So yeah, there are 4 creatures there. So I don't think Thea would have been able to win that turn either way.
She would have been able to put him to 1. It would have been very close. We see now, yeah, with Stormbreath Dragon and Fanatic Amogus, she's very close.
Well, I think her plan has to just be play Stormbreath Dragon past the turn back and hope that Andrew makes a bad attack.
Yeah.
And doesn't play around Fanatic. Because then she should be able to win.
So if next turn she plays Fanatic and swings Dragon.
But, I don't think Andrew's going to give her another turn. Andrew's too good of a player. I think he's just going to try to lock this game out right here. He does have Scavenging Ooze, so he will be able to gain 3 life going up to 12.
Yeah, so Thea can chump away if Andrew taps out all his green, which I don't think Andrew will, Thea can chump away the Frostburn Weird, and then with Fanatic and Stormbreath, we'll have enough damage to lethal this turn. But now this swing makes me think that Andrew has no intention of giving her another untap.
Yeah, so let's see here. It looks like if she puts the Frostburn Weird in front of...
Well, she could block the 2 biggest creatures to block would be Ooze and Worm, and at least 1 would trample over from the Worm. So that's 1, and then 7 damage from the 3 unblocked,
plus
like 2
she's
more for the charm
no
is 9.
Yep. So Thea Steele loses game 1. A little unfortunate there. She wasn't able to draw a 5th land earlier. If she draws a 5th land at any point in that game, she would have been able to play that dragon and likely just lock up this game. Unfortunately, when she finally did draw a 5th land, it was a Temple of Silence, so a Temple of Triumph rather, so wasn't able to actually do anything in that game.
All right, so while these 2 players prepare their sideboards for games 2, 3, and possibly more, we're going to come back in the booth and do one of our trivia questions again.
Yes, and this one is for 3 months of trivia, I believe. 3 months of Star City Games Premium. So for those of you at home, the trivia question is, there is a one-of instant in Andrew Shrout's Selesnya deck, in his main deck. What is that one-of instant that is also popular among blue-white control decks?
Blue-white control, so it can't be Azorius Charm.
So it's a one-of instant that Andrew Shrout plays in his Selesnya aggro main deck that is also popular among other blue-white control decks that we've seen throughout the weekend. Tweet us that answer at SCG Live. Make sure you add hashtag SCG Premium, and we'll announce a winner after this round. You can get 3 months of Star City Games Premium.
Absolutely. So let's go to the sideboard. The sideboarding for this match actually is very interesting. I was talking with Andrew about it, and he said he had prepared different contingency sideboards based on what he thought Thea was doing with her sideboard.
Yeah, it's definitely a bit of a guessing game because Shrout has 4 copies of Influencing Courage, 3 copies of Witch Stalker, 3 copies of Glare Heresy, 3 Last Breath, 1 Boon Satyr, and 1 Scavenging Ooze. Obviously, Glare of Heresy is a card that is probably the one that he has to concern himself most with because obviously you can take out a Chain to the Rocks, you can take out a Boros Reckoner, you could potentially take out a Sembo Legion if Thea decides to bring that card in. But at the same time, Thea could choose just to turn those cards off by boarding out her Chain to the Rocks and Boros Reckoners.
Yeah.
Again, will she do that? Does she value Boros Reckoner that much? It's really tough to tell, but I think Andrew's kind of afraid of having that Glare just be dead in his hand.
Yeah, so if we start with Thea's sideboard, I think the one thing we can for sure say is that she'll be bringing in the 4th Chain to the Rocks. Andrew's a creature-based deck, and Chain is very excellent against that.
Well, the only thing is, there is a chance she might just try to make those Glares. If she thinks he's bringing in Glare of Heresy, I could see her just boarding out her white cards and making him dead.
Right.
It's not like
she can't board out the Boros Reckoners. They're too.
I don't know. I don't know. She can't. They weren't amazing in that game in particular, And if he's bringing in Glare of Heresy and he already has Banisher Priests, I mean, it's not like those cards are obviously very good against white weenie decks and mono red weenie decks. But I'm not sure how amazing it is against a deck like green white aggro when the creatures he could be attacking you with are 5/5 Miscutter Hydras or 5/5 Advent of the Worms.
Yes.
So obviously they're good, but I wouldn't be surprised if Thea said, "I'm going to try to turn off those Glares."
Well, she certainly. Yeah, she certainly can play around the Glares that way. I don't know if Andrew, when I talked to him, I don't know if he actually was planning to bring in the Glares when he was talking about different strategies in the matchup. One of the things he wasn't sure of to beginning with, whether or not Thea would bring in the 3 Anger of the Gods. Anger of the Gods is usually in this matchup for the smaller end decks, the white weenie decks, the really small red decks. He suspects that she will bring them in, but that
She is
does
definitely bringing those
okay.
cards in.
Okay. Yeah.
Thea basically has a very simple option. She has 2 options available to her. She can bring in 3 Anger of the Gods, 3 War Leader Helix, and 1 Chain to the Rocks, and she can board out the 2 Perforos, the 2 Hammer Perforos, the 1 Chandra Pyromaster, and 2 Fanatic Amogus. I think that's probably her ideal strategy. However, if she wants to try to hedge against the fact that Andrew might be bringing in Glare of Heresy, I think she could potentially board out 4 Boros Reckoner and 3 Chain to the Rocks, and just board in the War Leader's Helix, the Anger of the God, and maybe 1 copy of Wear and Tear, just in case he might bring in Armored Unflinching Courage. But again, I think that's a little more aggressive strategy. You're kind of trying to overthink things. So in general, though, I just think Anger of the Gods, War Leader's Helix, you want more removal. Again, that 4th Chain to the Rocks, you're probably just going to play it safe and just overload on removal.
Yeah. So she has so much removal. So Andrew was a little concerned about Unflinching Courage. Clearly, it's a good card against red decks, and you want some number of them. What he was worried about is that Thea does play 3 Mizium Mortars, and a lot of his creatures, even after he Unflinching Courages them, are still within Mizium Mortars range. He said he for sure plans to bring in some, but he's not sure that all 4 are actually quality in this matchup.
Yeah, he's not really playing a Selesnya aggro deck like some of the other ones we've seen that have Call the Conclave in it, or a full complement of Fleecemane Lions. So obviously being able to go turn 2, 3/3, and then Unflinching Courage that's obviously huge, because you're making your creature a 5/5, and Chain to the Rocks is basically the only card that can deal with a 5/5 out of Thea's deck. But yeah, I'm with you. I'm not sure a full complement of Unflinching Courage is necessarily a card you want to bring in against Red-White Devotion. Maybe a couple that just so when you do get those Advent of the Worms online, or a large Mistcutter Hydra, you can suddenly put a Courage on it and gain a lot of life to put yourself out of Fanatic Amogus range, or race a Stormbreath Dragon.
Yeah, definitely. The biggest thing is that Andrew can't lose his aggressive curve because of the fact that Stormbreath Dragon is a 4 of in Thea's deck. And he actually he said in his 75 has no answer to, really at all, to Stormbreath Dragon. He can't block it. He can't kill it.
Last Breath, obviously a card that's probably coming out of Andrew's deck. The one of Boon Satyr, also not really impressive in this matchup either, so I could see that coming out, along with some number of Skylashers. And he's probably going to want to bring in maybe 2 Unflinching Courage, maybe the Glare of Heresy, but definitely the Scavenging is probably coming in as well.
All right, from our other match, our backup feature match, Shaheen Sarani wins Game 1 over Brian Braunduin.
Oh, so the Esper Mirror, Shaheen breaks serve despite being on the draw, so he wins Game 1, and Brian Braunduin now has to try to battle back.
All right, Game 2, Thea on the play again, starts with Temple of Triumph, keeps the card on top and passes.
Yep, and it looks like Thea does have that Stormbreath Dragon in her hand. That's the signature card for her in this matchup.
All right, Andrew this time, though, will be able to power out cards. He has a turn 1 Elvish Mystic, which is probably pretty important in this deck because it gives him the ability to be the more aggressive player.
Well, it was a lot better in the old Selesnya deck when they can go turn 2 Loxodon Smiter. Unfortunately, Andrew does not have that option in his deck. So basically, there's not that much impressive cards he can ramp to. He can basically just cast Advent of the Worm a little faster, but it looks like he is just going to have to settle for an old 2-drop, either Voice of Resurgence or Fleecemane Lion.
Yeah. Both of them have a little bit of difficulty getting past this Frostburn Weird that Thea had made. So right now Thea is able to keep her life total as pretty high as right now. She has a wall set up, and that's exactly where she wants to be when she has a Stormbreath Dragon already in her hand.
Yes, Thea just wants to keep making her land drops and try to just get that dragon in play.
And we see Anger of the Gods. No, it is Boros Reckoner. Okay.
So Boros Reckoner, really good right here. Andrew I'm not even sure if he has a Selesnya Charm. But even the Selesnya Charm wouldn't make the Fleecemane Lion big enough if you wanted to attack. So looks like he's just going to have to try to commit more creatures to the board, which again plays right into the Anger of the Gods that Thea has in her deck.
Yeah, and Boros Reckoner, as you said, one of the reasons why Andrew has to consider boarding in Glare of Heresy. The card can be an absolute beating against decks that just win with the attack step and not much removal. It's very hard to kill him without getting 2-for-1'd.
Yeah, so, and that's kind of why I suggested, I think he has to bring in Glare of Heresy just because Boros Reckoner is too good, which is why I thought Thea might consider kind of overthinking it and saying, I'm just going to board out my white permanents, but again, Reckoner is just too good, so I think option A of just overloading him on removal is the best strategy.
Yeah.
And she certainly has cards in this matchup that aren't that great. Perforos isn't that ideal in this matchup, along with Hammer,
Yeah.
really not that
Even
great.
if Andrew has 3 glares, he has to have 1 in his hand, otherwise she gets a Boros Reckoner out
Yeah.
of the deal.
So
We'll see if that's it. It is
it's a last breath.
breath.
So he did keep in the last breath. I guess he just was afraid of a Frostburn Weird being just too much of a wall in this matchup, which it would have been great. Unfortunately, Thea does have another wall in the form of Boros Reckoner. So
now it'll be interesting. The question is, how many last breaths are in Andrew Shrout's deck? You know,
exactly.
he could have
He
anywhere
could have
between
boarded
1
more.
and 4.
Yeah, he could have boarded in. He definitely kept in at least 1. Could have boarded in another one here. Now Taya's faced with the decision: does she want to block here and 2-for-1 Andrew by killing the experiment 1, or does she want to just keep that Reckoner in play still?
Yeah, she values the Reckoner enough that she's going to go ahead and take 3 here. I think it's due in part to the fact she's at 24 from last breath, and also that we see a Nykthos Shrine to Nyx in her hand. She really would like to have Boros Reckoner in play for that card.
Yeah, so the last breath was even more important there for Andrew because she would have been able to ramp out that Stormbreath Dragon even faster.
Yeah, it would have been down next turn. Thea did draw a second copy of Nykthos.
So let's see here. Does she have Burning Tree Emissary for the total nuts?
Burning Tree Emissary. She can cast many spells this turn.
Yeah, Burning Tree Emissary would allow for a Stormbreath Dragon to come down this turn, but let's see what she wants to do. It looks like she will at least be able to cast Stormbreath Dragon next turn if she so chooses. And we also have a Mizium Mortars in hand.
Yeah, looks like she's going to go ahead and cast the Mizium Mortars immediately on Fleece Main Line. Her main worry here is that Andrew has 4 mana sources, and if he gets 1 more, then he can Monstrous the Fleece Main Line. While she could have wait to overload it, I think she chose that the Monstrous is too good.
Yes, so Thea deals with that Fleece Main Line right away. Boros Reckoner now is back on defense, and she has mana up to give it first strike if she so chooses. So yeah, I agree with you. Definitely playing around that monstrous ability.
Let's walk through Andrew's hand. I think Andrew's clearly playing around Anger of the Gods here. So his hand is Boon Satyr, Voice of Resurgence, and Experiment 1. If you notice, he didn't actually make Experiment 1 while before casting all these other cards. And I think that's really a respect for Anger of the Gods.
Yeah, I think he just wants to Boon Satyr up the Voice of Resurgence here. That's, that's a good way to play around Anger of the Gods and still have a threat in play afterwards. So Thea here, considering what could he have here, but I can't imagine not wanting to block here. Even if he does have a Boon Satyr, you'll still be able to deal with the Voice of Resurgence, or you can just kill the Experiment 1. So this is or the Elvish Mystic.
All right, so she does block with the Reckoner. The Boon Satyr will be bestowed on Voice of Resurgence. That makes him a 6/4, which means he will likely trade with the Boros Reckoner, as opposed to just...
This is tough, though, because if she does trade with it, then the Boon Satyr will come into play, and then...
and he'll get an Elemental token.
Well, the trigger can go on the stack, so the damage will resolve, trigger goes on the stack, and then she can target the Boon Satyr, I believe.
Well, it's only a 3. It's only a 3, though,
yeah,
right?
so no, she chooses not to redirect the damage to the Voice of Resurgence. And kill it that way. Yeah, so she can't redirect the damage to the Voice of Resurgence because then it would just die, and he'd be left with a Voice of Resurgence token and a Boon Satyr, and an Elvish Mystic.
And now we see Stormbreath Dragon from Thea, and this is where she wanted to get to. Stormbreath Dragon's on the board, and both players are still at high life totals. But thanks to Voice of Resurgence, Thea opted not to attack with the Stormbreath Dragon this turn.
Yeah, I think she wants to hold it back to block. Obviously, Voice of Resurgence is a white creature, so Stormbreath Dragon can block it and not be afraid of dying here. But it looks like Andrew's just going to play an Experiment 1 and still attack because, yeah, so Experiment 1 comes down, Voice of Resurgence comes down, it's going to grow Experiment 1. And if he chooses to attack with the Voice of Resurgence, both the creatures die, further growing Experiment 1, but he decides just to pass the turn back.
Yeah, so the question is, remember, he can't remove the Stormbreath Dragon.
Great draw there for Thea, another Stormbreath Dragon, so now she can choose to attack.
I mean, yeah, that's the scary part about this is she can choose to attack with the dragon. At the same time, this gives her enough red devotion that she will start monstrousing these dragons.
Yeah.
This is right where Andrew doesn't want to find himself.
Oh, I'm surprised she didn't attack that, sir, because I think she has a Fanatic Amogus in her hand as well.
Well, I think she may be on the game plan if she knows that Andrew just cannot remove Stormbreath Dragons, ever.
Yeah.
She could just leave them both back as blockers, monstrous them both, and then just swing.
Yeah, and she is playing around the Experiment. She's playing around the Inflinching Courage as well, because if Andrew just Inflinching Courages up one of the Voice of Resurgence, then the life swing kind of changes a little bit. So,
yeah, I think a pretty heads-up way to play. Actually.
Yeah, I think it's a safe play there. So, Thea now what is she going to do? Is she just going to try to monstrous both those creatures? Can she? She has access to 4 mana, 5, 6, and I think she has a 6 land in her hand, so she will have enough mana to monstrous here.
Yeah, if she makes a land drop, I think it's a Sacred Foundry, so she'd have to play it untapped. But yeah, she should have the 7 to monstrous the Stormbreath Dragon if she wishes.
I think she's just doing the math right here. I think Andrew has no cards in his hand either, so
she doesn't have to. Doing it now doesn't really gain too much of a benefit.
does she have a 3rd Stormbreath Dragon in her hand?
Oh my.
No, so she activates Nykthos for 4, 5 mana.
No, that is a 3rd Stormbreath.
That is a Stormbreath Dragon.
So we said this card was good in the matchup.
Yeah,
well,
I think
let us show you why.
Thea is comfortable with attacking with 1 dragon now, and unless Andrew I don't think there's anything Andrew can draw at this point. Those 3 dragons will be coming over next turn, and she does have enough mana to monstrous it. So Stormbreath Dragon is good in this matchup. 3 is fantastic.
Yeah,
3 is just too good in this matchup.
If you're, if you're Andrew, you have to just think, well, this will happen sometimes, and you probably will lose these games.
So looks like all those creatures are coming into the red zone here, and Thea is forced to decide what she wants to do. Looks like
Andrew has to attack like this at this point. I mean, he just sees the writing on the wall that these things are going to kill him, and quick.
Yeah. I think he's just putting a little pressure on Thea to make the correct decision, but yes, she does. She just blocks both Voice of Resurgence, takes 1 off the Elvish Mystic, and drops down to 1.
Remember, if Andrew doesn't play his card, these dragons are threatening lethal next turn. They can swing, the 3 from the monstrous, 1 damage from. Yeah,
well, they get +3/+3 anyway,
right.
So
the 12.
The flying
15.
is lethal no matter what, right?
Yeah. Well, flying it's just 12 right now. It's just 15. So the monsters would have to do the 16th point.
No, I'm sorry. She has a Fanatic Amogus in her hand, so I'm pretty sure it's
gosh,
lethal
then
no matter
everything's
what.
very lethal. Yes. Okay. Good.
So
absolutely.
Let's see if Thea. Oh, maybe she doesn't have Fanatic.
She has Burning Tree Emissary now. It's for more mana.
Oh,
yeah,
with the second Nykthos too.
Second Nykthos.
She might have enough to double Devotion. Let's see.
To
here.
double monstrous.
To double monstrous.
That would also be lethal. Well, with Burning Tree Emissary, that would easily be enough. It would be 8 mana. Let's see. She casts 2, so for free she would get 8 mana.
8 mana, plays another one, activates that 14 mana. Yeah, 14 mana is double monstrous.
She can monstrous 2 Stormbreath Dragons this turn. There is a play for lethal.
Let's see,
Thea go through it.
And Thea, again, they have perfect information. She knows his deck list, so she knows he really doesn't have any outs here. He could have Last Breath, and Last Breath one of his creatures to gain 4 life, so she has to play like he's at 20 basically to be safe.
Mm-hmm.
But I think still 12 plus 6, 18. And either way, he'll have the Last Breath in response to the monstrous, so he doesn't take damage. So then she could just play accordingly.
So 8 mana there off the Nykthos. There's 1 mana floating. She's going to go ahead and monstrous Stormbreath Dragon. In response, Andrew will cast Advent to the Worm so he doesn't take damage off the monstrous. But because that's his last card, Thea should know that she has lethal now.
Yeah, if she does have a second Nykthos in her hand and she didn't play a land this turn, which I don't believe she has. So yes, this should be lethal. Second Nykthos comes
you see her going right for it. So right now she has 1 mana floating. So there's the second land tapping that. That's 8 more mana. Monstrous another dragon, and we are on to game 2.
So Thea Steele, on the strength of triple Stormbreath Dragon, manages to beat Andrew Shrout in the second game. And we're gonna move on to game 3 here. So Thea now knows that Andrew did at least leave in a Last Breath. So Last Breath is in there. And maybe he just did board in all 4 Last Breaths as a way to just keep her off of Devotion, as well as kind of deal with that Frostburn weird, which could be an issue.
It looks like Thea is deciding to play this more like a control deck post board, especially if you look at how she was playing the Stormbreath Dragons that game. I would imagine that because we said Perforos is probably not in the deck. It'll be interesting still to see the other board plan. You see Shrout right now going back to his sideboard based on what he has seen so far.
Well, I think Thea is the control player in this matchup. She doesn't need to be aggressive. Obviously, she has cards like Ash Zealot, but she's not really capable of having these really hyper aggressive draws, particularly if Andrew just plays like a 3/3. The main point of her deck though is she can really turn the corner quickly because of cards like Fanatic and Stormbreath Dragon. So she doesn't need to be that aggressive. She can sort of create this board where things are she creates brick wall after brick wall, and then suddenly all of a sudden she plays a haster or just drains them for like 8 damage something, and then suddenly the life swing is heavily in her favor. So I definitely think she's more of the control player in this matchup.
Certainly. Andrew had boarded in the Last Breaths, which I think is a concession to try to either to get through her walls. Last Breath's not that aggressive of a card because of the 4 life. In some ways, he can keep her off devotion as well, which will slow her down at the very least.
I really don't like the Last Breath at all in this matchup. I'm actually surprised that he either kept it in or even boarded in more. It's possible maybe he left just one in or maybe boarded in his second, but I think it's too difficult to keep Thea off of devotion. And even if you did, it's not that big a deal because the main problem card is Stormbreath Dragon. So maybe if he thinks that being able to go after my own guy and sort of like if I'm in a race with Stormbreath Dragon, maybe that 4 life might matter. So maybe that's his rationale. If that's his rationale, I could see that. But obviously, there's a number of cards in his main deck that are pretty bad. Skylash are obviously not ideal, but Banisher Priest, the same thing. Maybe he doesn't want to keep in a full complement of Banisher Priest. But again, Banisher Priest is one of the few ways that he can actually go after a Boros Reckoner. Even though Thea can get it back, I still think that sometimes, particularly if you're on the play and you get those draws of Experiment 1, 2 drop, you need to be able to clear the path of Boros Reckoner if you want to keep pressing your advantage. So I think you have to keep in your Banisher Priest there.
Yeah, well, as we see, Andrew has re-sideboarded for this game. Thea kept her configuration from game 2. So we'll see if like I said, he had a lot of different contingencies for his sideboard. It'll be interesting to see how he's reacted to what he saw game 2.
Yeah, well, when you're on the play, there's a lot more options for you in terms of how you can play around Anger of the Gods. So I can definitely see Andrew changing his board plan depending if he's on the play or draw. Thea, on the other hand, I think her game plan is going to stay the same regardless. But we do have an update for you on our backup match. Shaheen Sarani is now up 2-0 versus Brian Brandwin.
All right, so both those players, just talking a little bit about their control decks, Shaheen's deck is the more reactive deck there. Remember, Brian is almost a mid-range deck, and in that matchup, the idea of Brian's deck was that he was going to play so many threats that that he would overload a control deck. If one deck slipped through, one card slipped through, it would be very hard for the control deck to deal with it. But Shaheen's deck is pretty good at board control. It has a lot more removal than it actually has counter spells, which could figure to be a pretty good matchup for Shaheen.
Yeah, he has the tension sphere. He also has Merciless Eviction, so he has a lot of cards that can actually deal with those threats that you mentioned. And although Brian does have 4 Nightveil Specters, which can be very effective in the matchup, so we'll see how the rest of the games go for them. But here we are in Game 3 of Thea Steele versus Andrew Shrout, and Andrew is debating if he wants to mulligan his hand. He is on the play.
Yeah, this is the first time he's been on the play. We'll see if he plays this more aggressively.
So he's going to keep his 7, and Thea is going to mulligan down to 6 cards here. And, mulligan for Thea, not ideal in this situation because her deck does not mulligan very well. It is a devotion deck. But Thea does have Anger of the Gods, which can get her right back in it, particularly when she's on the draw.
Yeah, in some ways it plays like it plays like a ramp deck. It's not a complete. Nykthos is a very interesting card in that, yeah, it is this critical mass thing of you need a critical amount of red mana symbols to really get the deck to work together. Same though, yeah, Anger of the Gods will, if she draws one in her opener, can give her a lot of mileage in this matchup.
Yeah, part of it's depending on how aggressive Andrew wants to be. I mean, Andrew knows that she only has 3 copies in her deck now, and he's not even sure if she boarded them in or not. So obviously, there are games where Andrew might overexpose himself a little too much to try to be aggressive and say you either have it or you don't.
Yeah,
and those are the games that Thea can kind of pull back in, even if she's far behind.
He may need to be proven that she has them in the deck. He might need to see one get cast. The main card for Andrew that I've been noticing in these games that's very important for him is Advent of the Worm. It seems like that 5/5 is it's really just a critical size. You look at Thea's removal. She has Mizium Mortars. She has Chained to the Rocks. She has War Leader's Helix. Of those, only Chained to the Rocks can deal with an Advent of the Worm, and even then she'll have to take an attack from it first.
Yeah, I think Andrew's ideal situation is basically on turn 4, he just passes, and Thea's forced to deal with the creatures in play, and then he just goes Advent, untap, go, or even like Boon Satyr at the end of your turn. He doesn't want to have to tap 3 mana on his turn and play another creature. I think his ideal turn is like 1 drop, 2 drop, 3rd land, go. Anger the Gods, I'll cast Boon Satyr, untap, attack. You deal with that, I'll cast Advent of the Worm.
All right, so game is underway. Andrew Shrout starts on Celestia Guildgate. Thea Steele on Temple of Triumph. Remember, she is on a 6-card hand for game 3.
Yeah, so Andrew doesn't have one of his 1 drops in his hand, or at least couldn't cast it because of the Selesnya Guildgate. And that's one of those concessions that nobody really wants to play a Guildgate in a deck like this, but you kind of have to just because your mana is a little awkward.
Yeah, green-white doesn't have a temple yet, so
Wow.
you just get a Guildgate instead.
So no 2-drop for Andrew. A little fortunate there for Thea. Thea's going to take 2 and play one of her 2-drops.
Yeah, she's going to go for Ashes Out, so now she's on the attack again. Were this game 1, I would say Andrew probably has a Skylasher here. However, I'm not positive those cards are in after board, as they're pretty weak in the matchup.
So last breath there for Andrew. Thea gains 4 life, so she goes up to 22. And now a 3rd land for Andrew. Let's see.
Yeah, the sequencing of Andrew's plays here are pretty interesting. He's had this Elvish Mystic I believe the whole game, but he's gone with Guildgate into Last Breath into Elf. So it's like he wants the extra mana from Elf, but he doesn't need it right away.
Yeah, that's kind of why I don't like Elvish Mystic in this deck, because it doesn't really ramp you too much other than like turn 4 Advent the Worm, which is pretty good. But in general, it's not nearly impressive if you don't have Loxodon Smiter in your deck.
All right, so from Thea we see another Temple.
So Temple of Triumph comes down, and she's going to elect to keep that card on the top of her deck. She does have a Nykthos in her hand as well. Does she? Oh, she has a Burning Tree Emissary. So Burning Tree Emissary is going to come down. That'll help her get a little devotion later on.
Yeah, she could follow up with Amizium Mortars here. Looks like she's debating on that one and decides to just play Burning Tree Emissary. The free mana does not do anything. And Andrew will Celestia Charm on end step.
Put a Reduke Knight token into play. Let's see. Ooh, Andrew drew a Boon Satyr for the turn, so great draw for Andrew here.
Yeah.
He can attack with the Knight and then cast the Boon Satyr, so put further pressure on Thea without really overcommitting to the board and still having a blocker back because that token does have Vigilance.
Yeah, so it looks like Andrew's remaining hand here is, after casting the Boon Satyr, is just a Last Breath and what I believe is a Glare of Heresy. So Andrew suits up the Knight, swings in for 6, and passes back.
Ooh, there's a Stormbreath Dragon for Thea. It doesn't look like she's going to be able to cast it this turn unless she has another Burning Tree Emissary, which I doubt it. But she does have a Stormbreath Dragon, and it looks like she does have a Nykthos and another land, so that could come into play next turn. And again, that Knight token is white. So despite being a 6/4, it can be blocked and killed with the Stormbreath Dragon.
Even though the Boon Satyr is green, it'll have protection from the whole creature.
Currently, Boon Satyr is just an enchant creature, not the creature. So Thea does have Amizium Mortars as well, but I don't think she wants to use it just yet. There's really no good targets for her. Maybe she just wants to play the...
Well, she could hit the Knight token and then try to trade the Burning Tree Emissary with the Boon Satyr.
I'd rather get more value, especially if I have a Nykthos in my hand and I can overload it later in the game. I just don't see the value in casting Amizium Mortars here.
All right, she's going to go for the play. So maybe just with the Stormbreath Dragons, she's defending her life total as much as she can.
Yeah, it's certainly possible, but I don't think she's that low that it's that much of a concern for her. But again, I agree with you. Her plan now is basically, okay, I'm just going to trade with your Boon Satyr, and then I'm going to play Stormbreath Dragon. The only problem with that is if he has a Selesnya Charm, then suddenly that's really bad for you because you're going to take 6 trample, you're going to take 4 trample, and your Stormbreath Dragon might have to chump block a Boon Satyr next turn.
Yeah, it does make the creature green now.
Yeah, so that's the main problem that I had with that play is that, okay, you're going to take 6 next turn, you're going to drop to 10, but then you have a Stormbreath Dragon that has pro-white, so you can trade with the Knight if he decides to attack with it. Then you use your Mortars on the Boon Satyr.
So 3 mana from Andrew Shrout is going to be Unflinching Courage cast on the Boon Satyr.
Yeah,
and
so this is exactly the kind of thing I was afraid of.
This is why you want now you want another Amizium Mortars, and he's able to stick Unflinching Courage on a green creature, not a white creature.
Exactly. So now, even that Stormbreath Dragon comes down, it's going to have to block, and it will trade with the Boon Satyr at best. So let's see what she draws here. It looks like it's an Anger of the Gods.
So just a turn too late there. The Boon Satyr now has 4 toughness.
Yeah, so Thea, it looks like her only option here is just to play a dragon.
Yeah, she may have to trade. She will probably, if Andrew lets her, trade the dragon with the Boon Satyr.
No, I think at this point, she has to just pass the turn back, right?
Yeah, to trade them.
I think she has to try to monstrous her Stormbreath Dragon.
Oh, okay. So she needs to just eat the Boon Satyr.
So 4, 5, 6. Does he have another land? Oh, she has a Perforos in her hand either too. So no, she has to take it and hope that he doesn't have another Boon Satyr. I think she has to try to take it and hope he doesn't have another Boon Satyr here.
All right.
Obviously, a second Boon Satyr would be lethal, but Celestia Charm isn't lethal, and I think she has to take a chance here.
Because if she loses the Stormbreath Dragon, she has very little action.
I think she has very little action. I don't know. I think because if he has another Boon Satyr, you're blown out here no matter
Right.
what.
So he didn't have the trick. So now the trade does succeed. Or are you happy about that if you're on Tea's side? You did get the Boon Satyrs off the table now.
Yeah, the Boon Satyr's off the table, and she has a Perforos, and she still has that Anger of God, so she's still in good shape. I just think that if she had a turn to Monster Sid, I think that she could have been in a little bit better shape.
All right, so she'll make Perforos and Boros Guildgate. That last card in her hand, remember, is an Anger of the Gods, and she passes back. Now they are at somewhat of a standstill. Elvish Mystic will suspiciously attack into Burning Tree Emissary.
It looks like she's just going to take it here.
It's going to get Boon
and
Satyred.
Boon Satyr comes down, and Thea drops now to 5 life. So she is in a very dangerous position here.
Yeah, she can anger away the first time, but then the question will be...
She loses this Burning Tree Emissary,
She
though.
loses the Emissary, and then the Boon Satyr's still in play, so she'll have to deal with that. What she'd really like to find right now would be something like Boros Reckoner.
Oh, wow. It looks like she has double Anger of the Gods here, so...
she can hit the Boon Satyr.
She could cast both Anger of the Gods if she so chooses. That would deal with the Elvish Mystic and then the Boon Satyr, which will come into play.
Yeah, I think if you're going to make that line, if I'm Thea, I would like to do it next turn. I'd like to make a chump block this turn to see if you can get Andrew to play anything else.
The problem is, though, she knows that Andrew has Last Breath in his deck based on the last game. So
Sure.
she could just be, and she'll go up to 9, but she'll take 5, so she'll go down to 4, and then
She's probably fine with that.
But also Selesnya Charm also kills you, right? So
Selesnya Charm would
5,
kill you
6,
in that
7.
situation.
Yeah, so Selesnya Charm kills you. Another Boon Satyr kills you.
Well, we know that he didn't have Celeste. If it's Celestial Charm, he would have
Well,
had to have just drawn it.
No, but I'm saying a top deck Selesnya Charm,
Yes.
a top deck Boon Satyr kills you. So it's a little risky here. She's trying to get a little too much value, I think, out of this Anger of the Gods.
I like the line. I think she has nothing else going on. So I like trying to extract extra value out of it right here.
Yeah, it's certainly a fine play. I mean, she exposes herself a little bit, but she can block she can block with the Burning Tree Emissary and pump it with Perforos now if she chooses.
Or she can actually double pump it, and actually there's a single pump. Yeah, she can make the trade happen. So I guess there isn't any pressure here. I mean, Andrew can offer this trade, right? And
So
block
he's
and
gonna
pump.
block there. And so good news for Thea. It looks like the trade will happen, and I think Andrew does have a Last Breath, but he's not going to use it, obviously. So now Thea just draws a mountain for a turn, and I think now she has to cast Anger of the
She
Gods.
probably has to cast Anger of the Gods now.
So Anger of the Gods is going to get cast, and Boon Satyr will get removed from the game. Andrew I don't think he has an instant creature in his hand.
Yeah, that is the danger. At any time, Andrew could have an advent of the worm here and just really go to town.
Yeah,
we
so
see Selesnya Charm now in Andrew's hands.
So let's need Charm a way for him to get a creature into play, and it looks like there is a Burning Tree Emissary from Thea, so a little closer to getting Devotion.
Andrew drops to 30.
So Glare of Heresy, Last Breath, and Selesnya Charm in Andrew's hand currently.
And this is one of the dangers with Glare of Heresy. It is very good when it's on in this matchup. Though to be fair, it only is it only targets the Reckoners and the Chain to the Rocks.
Yeah, it's one of those things that you're just consigned to use, but you don't really want in your deck.
I'm not sure. I believe he may have hit. Have we hit Stormbreath Dragon again?
I don't know. It looks like all I see is Anger of the Gods.
It may just be all Anger of the Gods.
So
Stormbreath Dragon, it couldn't be taking this long, right? It would just be you just play it.
Looks like Andrew's holding that Selesnya Charm in case Perforos becomes active.
Yeah, it looks like it's 2 Anger of the Gods. So she's wondering whether or not to attack here. She's going to go ahead and attack.
We're going to see a max pump here.
Probably. Pump for 1, pump for 2. That'll be a swing of 4.
So 4 damage.
I think Andrew's saying, wait, he may want to respond to the first pump. If he wants to Last Breath it, he does have to do it. Well, he can't. No, he just can't
Last Breath it now.
Yeah.
Unless she sequenced it incorrectly and put both of them on the stack.
Well, I mean, what is he thinking about here? What can he do? He can't.
Maybe we're at the end of his turn. I don't know, but there's not much he can do because Selesnya Charm doesn't kill it because it's only 4 power.
I'm assuming we've gone past blocks. He can't just make a knight and block here. Not that I would want to if I were Andrew anyway.
That's I think the assumption is that we're past blocks at this point, but so let's see. We're having a conversation here from is the judge involved in this or? Okay, so Andrew's still just thinking about what he wants to do. Yeah, and he just takes it. Not sure what else he could do there, but
Yeah, and he doesn't end step thus
Oh,
the
wow.
knight, but that advent is
Just drew an
going to
advent of
be
the worm for the
good.
turn. That's going to be. Oh, wow.
Is
So,
that Boros Reckoner?
yeah, Thea drew
Whew.
a Boros Reckoner. So, Advent of the Worm plus Selesny Charm is going to be looking pretty good for Andrew. Unfortunately, Thea did draw a Boros Reckoner, so that's going to make
Well,
things a little more complicated.
we should look at Tea's amount of mana here. So, say Thea casts Boros Reckoner, right? Leaving up Nykthos. She'll have a devotion of 6, and that's just enough mana to give Boros Reckoner first strike and double pump him to make him a 5/3 first strike.
Yeah, but Andrew does have that Selesny
He
Charm, so
does.
he could end up using it on the Perforos, because obviously Perforos is indestructible. It can block that Advent of the Worm token all day.
Remember, Andrew dropped to 22 there.
And
But
yep,
yeah, and Perforos.
Perforos is gone, so now there's just a Boros Reckoner in play.
Yeah, she could have swung with the Perforos that turn.
And the Glare of Heresy takes care of the Boros Reckoner, and Thea Steele
go.
falls to the Advent of the Worm. So Thea Steele falls to 1 and 2 against Andrew Shrout after a mulligan to 6. And again, I think that turn, if she was able to just wait and activate Stormbreath Dragon, I think she would have been in a much better position. The way it played out, once Andrew drew that Unflinching Courage, the plan of just chump blocking with my Burning Tree Emissary was no longer on the table for her. And if he drew the Unflinching Courage when the Knight was in play, he could Unflinching Courage that up. But again, Stormbreath Dragon has pro-white, so he wouldn't be gaining any life off of it.
Right, she would have had a set. If she can keep Stormbreath Dragon on the table, in any sense, it's something that she's pretty interested in doing.
Yeah, she basically just has to dodge a pump spell for 1 turn from Andrew.
Yeah, once she has a Stormbreath Dragon in play, Andrew will have to.
And it can't be any pump spell. It has to be another Boon Satyr.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, as it would have dropped her to 4, and I think that's what she was worried about in the situation. Then cards like an End-Step Advent to the Worm become very difficult for her to deal with. Actually, Celestia Charms start making lethal attackers, and I think I agree with you that you have to go that low anyway.
But the thing is, though, if he has that stuff, you're losing anyway in all likelihood. Like the you know what I mean? Like if your plan is to do this and then chump block, if he has those spells, you're going to lose anyway.
He doesn't have them now. Like he would, because she has the
I understand,
yeah.
but if he draws it, it doesn't matter. She's going to lose anyway. So I think you have to get a little lucky. You have to put yourself in a position to get lucky. And sometimes getting lucky doesn't mean top decking. It just means your opponent bricks for a turn or two. And in that situation, he really just needs to brick for 1 turn, because she monstresses it. And she basically just has a couple more turns to draw some action there. So I don't know if the game changes dramatically, but I definitely think she's able to survive that portion, because Andrew was only at that high life because of the Unflinching Courage. So
he did get to gain 12 off the
Unflinching
Courage.
He gained 12 life with that card. So it'd be interesting to see what happens if she takes a little more aggressive line there. But again, it's tough because you don't want to fall that low when you're playing against a beatdown deck. So you could get a little scared.
Yeah, Andrew did end the game at 22. She was able to deal 10 damage before the end of the game. So the life gain of 12 was relevant. It wasn't the deal breaker, but it was pretty good. You're right.
Yeah, it all comes down to she would have also had the Mizium Mortars in her hand. That was the key. She would have had that Mizium Mortar still in her hand.
And would have been able to overload it at some point.
Because she ended up just Mizium Morting the Knight, and then her plan was to chump block with the Burning Tree Emissary. So I think the whole game changes at that point. Because then she could just deal with the Boon Satyr anyway and start attacking with that Stormbreath Dragon. And Andrew's hand was actually pretty bad for most of the game. It was like a Glare and the last breath. Wow.
Yeah. So Andrew let's go to the last breaths. Andrew really believes in the strength of last breath in this matchup, and I know that this isn't just Andrew boarding on the fly. I was talking to him. He's boarded. He's practicing this match most of last night. A couple, actually, of his team members from the Pro Tour. Ari Lax was working with him yesterday, long distance, to help him out with the matchup, he said.
Yeah, and so far I'm not sure how I feel about them. I mean, they haven't really seemed that impressive to me. Obviously, they were pretty dead in that game. I'm not sure if Skylasher would have been that much better, but again, it would have given him a threat at one point, I think. But I don't know. I definitely can see why he would want it sometimes. It keeps her off devotion. It stops her nut devotion draw, basically,
It does? Yeah, it does take away her nut draws. And maybe that's just what he needs to do.
Yeah, but again, if she casts Stormbreath Dragon, basically you're preventing her from casting Stormbreath Dragon on turn 4 as opposed to turn 5, which, could be the difference between winning and losing, but I'm not quite sure if it would matter that much. But Let's see. We're going to game 4 here, and Thea Steele will be on the play. Let's see if she's okay with this 7. We saw the anger of the god in anger of the gods in game 3, so Andrew knows what he has to deal with.
Yeah, so we'll see. This is Thea down 2-1. We are in game 4 right now. This is the quarterfinals of the Invitational. Thea is on the play. She's playing Red White Devotion. It's a matchup which is pretty decent for her deck. Certainly a matchup that Andrew Shrout is hoping to get to dodge, to get out of the top 8. He feels really good about the rest of the tournament.
So Thea's hand is keepable, and Andrew is going to have to mulligan. He had no green sources in his opening hand, so he's going to mulligan down to 6 this time. And, Thea has that Perforals. Perforal's a card that's really not that great in my experience in this matchup. Obviously, having indestructibility is great, but especially if you've seen cards like Last Breath now, and you already know he has Selesnya Charm, you can't always rely on Perforals being able to block, and its other abilities aren't that relevant in this matchup.
Yeah, so we're going to go, while they're in sideboarding, we're going to talk a little bit about the other part of the bracket. In the top half, we have Gregory Hatch versus Eric Smith. This is the 1v8 match. Remember, Eric Smith is your invitational winner from Somerset just 2 invitationals ago, but he's currently down 2-1 to Greg Hatch.
Yeah, Greg Hatch, again, playing that Mono Blue Devotion deck, and he was feeling pretty good about the matchup. He was playing Eric Smith playing the Red White Devotion deck, very similar to Thea's list. And, Red White Devotion has a tough time with cards like Master of the Veil and, Tassa and Master of the Waves.
Yeah, Night Veil Spectre and Master of Waves. They're both pretty good. Yeah.
So Greg Hatch up 2-1 in that matchup, and Andrew Shrout here in the middle of resolving a mulligan. Let's see if his 6-card hand is keepable. Yeah, down. Oh, wow. So we have an update for another match here, and this match is complete. Max Brown defeats Alex Bertoncini 3-0, and that's somewhat of a surprise because we thought that Blue-White Control generally has a very reasonable matchup against Mono Black. I certainly wouldn't have expected a 3-0.
Max wasn't looking forward to the matchup either. Actually, he said it was one of his worst matchups, but I was able to, in convincing fashion, dispatch Bertoncini, and Max will play the winner of this match.
Yeah, so let's see. Oh, wow. Thea has a couple of Anger of the Gods, but no 3rd mana here. So Thea kept it looks like a 2-land hand, but a 2-land, one of them being a Nykthos and a Burning Tree Emissary.
I mean, this is the kind of hand, yeah, this is a really tempting hand to keep, and not too bad. Yeah, Burning Tree Emissary, Nykthos, 2-land, Anger of the Gods, Boros Reckoner. It's got so many pieces to a nut draw in it that I think she was going for the nut draw here.
Yeah, everything you'd want in a hand. But again, because she has 2 Anger of the Gods, it's actually still pretty good for her because if she does draw a 3rd land, she can cast Anger of the Gods, and then Andrew might expose himself a little too much because thinking, oh, well, she used one already, she's probably not going to have another.
Yeah, well, so her fear here is that Andrew just plays a turn 4 Advent of the Worm. That would be tough for her to deal with.
I think her real fear is not drawing a 3rd mana, which
okay, you're absolutely right.
Exactly what happened here. She did draw a Nykthos, but Nykthos not going to do anything in this situation. So she could, let's see here. Yeah, there's really...
No, she could play the Nykthos to get 2 colorless in a red, but there's nothing for her to cast with that either.
She doesn't have anything that costs 2 colorless and a red in her hand, so looks like she might have to just discard here. And she's going to discard a Nykthos and pass the turn back. Oh, Andrew might have an effect at the end step.
Yeah, but it's going to be another night.
Yeah, so this is a really, really dangerous situation for Thea. Now, if Andrew has a 4th land and he has that Advent in the Worm, this is basically going to be a nightmare scenario for her. And thankfully, though, it looks like he just has land and some reactive spells. He does have a Boon Satyr, which we'll see if he wants to cast it at the end of her turn or if he wants to just try to equip something up.
Yeah, now, if she had drawn the land there, I would say Thea would have a great play in Anger of the Gods here, but she does not, and means that next turn Andrew will be able to hold up a Boon Satyr, and as a result, Anger won't even really hurt him here.
Yeah, so, ooh, wow, he drew a Mistkiter Hydra, so not sure if he has a 5th mana, but he does have another play if he wants to try to get a little more aggressive, attack for 7. Let's switch on a 2-turn clock. Oh, even better, he does have the 5th land, so now I would imagine we're going to just see a Boon Satyr here and attack Thea down to 6, I believe.
With Mistkiter Hydra, one of the things that Andrew was saying he wanted to make sure he did was to always make it a 4/4 out of fear of Anger of the Gods.
At this point, Thea has no outs. Even with the Anger of the Gods, the Boon Satyr will come into play, and then that Mistkiter Hydra will finish things off here. So Thea stuck on land here for several turns, and Andrew had the perfect draw to kind of put pressure on her. So Thea looks like she's going to lose this match here. She's trying to figure out if there's a way for her to get most of the value out of it. She can play, she can drop down to 4 with that
Yeah, I mean, Sacred Foundry.
Sacred Foundry.
If she has a line that keeps her alive, it's going to start with Sacred Foundry into play untapped. Because we know the line of Sacred Foundry tapped no plays, that loses.
Yeah, so Burning Tree, she can go Burning Tree Emissary, activate Nykthos for 2. Yeah, so I don't think there's anything really in her hand that can get her out of this game because of the miscut of Hydra in Andrew's hand. So we have an update for you. Our backup match, Shaheen Surani defeats Brian Brando in 3-0. Wow, so 2 matches that we thought were going to go a little longer ended up going much shorter. Shaheen Surani defeats Brian Brando in 3-0. He moves on to the top 4. He will face the winner of the Gregory Hatch-Eric Smith match. And Max Brown defeats Alex Bertoncini, and he will face the winner of this match, which it looks like it might be Andrew Shrout.
Yeah, and Andrew Shrout is not particularly happy with that result. Alex Bertoncini was on blue-white control. Andrew's deck has 8 main deck protection from blue creatures. Instead, he will likely face, if he's our winner, will face Max Brown. Max is playing mono-black Devotion. And there we have it. Andrew wins 3-1 over Thea Steele, and he does advance to the semifinals where he will meet Max Brown. So Andrew's green-white aggro deck will be playing up against mono-black.
Yeah, and you know, I think Andrew said he felt really good if he can get through this matchup. I think this is probably the matchup that he was most concerned with of all the other decks in the top 8. Obviously, he feels comfortable playing against control decks. He feels comfortable playing against mono blue. So this is the one that he had most concern with, and he managed to defeat Thea through some fortunate draws. And Thea falls to 3-1, but still a good showing overall for the weekend. And now our top 4 is close to being set. We have one